Welcome to the On Your Mind podcast, where we are changing the mental health narrative, bringing hope and solutions. Here's your host, Timothy J. Hayes, psychologist.
Mia Greco is the owner of Olive Branch Nutrition. Mia pioneers a revolutionary paradigm shift in nutritional counseling, emphasizing holistic health and individual well-being over conventional diet culture. At Olive Branch Nutrition, Mia offers a safe, supportive environment where clients feel empowered to explore their unique nutritional journeys, free from judgment or weight-centric ideologies. Her weight-inclusive, non-diet philosophy is deeply rooted in the health at every size movement, promoting body acceptance, intuitive eating, and honoring diverse bodies. Mia treats patients with eating disorders, disordered eating, and chronic disease using the weight-inclusive nutrition program. Mia's academic background includes a Master of Science in Nutrition and Master of Public Health degrees. Mia, welcome. It's a delight to see you face-to-face.
Thank you, Dr. Tim. Thank you very much for having me here. I appreciate it.
I'm looking forward to hearing about how you got into the work you do and what drives your passion for it.
Absolutely. So I am a registered dietitian and I own Olive Branch Nutrition, which is a weight-inclusive outpatient nutrition counseling practice that specializes in eating disorder treatment. I've not always been in this line of work. I became a dietitian about 15 years ago, solely not for my passion for nutrition or for my passion for healthcare, but for my passion of chasing the thin ideal, meaning that I really wanted to be a dietitian so I myself could find the secret of pursuing the ideal body that society told me was important to have. I worked in a traditional sense as a dietitian for 15 years until the end of 2019, when I was at a family party and my cousin, actually my cousin's wife, introduced me to the concept of intuitive eating. So intuitive eating is a set of principles that was developed by dietitians Elise Rush and Evelyn Triboli, that helps people really heal their relationship with food. When I discovered intuitive eating, I recognized that I had had a really disordered relationship with food and my body for, most of my life. And I had finally, recognized that striving for the thin ideal wasn't something that I wanted for myself or for the community that maybe I could serve. So in leaning into learning more about intuitive eating, I also stumbled upon the social movement of health at every size, which just means that instead of prioritizing weight loss and weight as a goal of health, it's really focusing on health behaviors for people in all different sizes. Armed with this new knowledge, I worked on healing myself and my relationship with food and making peace with food, and developed the passion that led me to open my business, which is Olive Branch Nutrition. I began seeing in 2020 and then slowly evolved to working mostly with folks struggling with eating disorders. Binge eating disorder, anorexia, bulimia, orthorexia, disordered eating, and chronic dieting. So my personal passion to become thin and having disordered eating and to become a dietitian kind of took 180 when I discovered intuitive eating, and then led me to build my private practice in helping people discover food freedom the way I had for myself.
Amazing. So it's only been about not quite 4 years that you've been on the intuitive eating path and the health at every size. Is that the second one?
Yes, that's correct. Mm-hmm.
So give me an overview of how you would say what you're doing now is significantly different from what you did for the first 12 or so years as a dietitian.
Sure. So in the first 12 years as a dietitian, I worked primarily in long-term care. And it was a very weight-centric model. We utilized BMI to determine if, a patient was, overweight or obese, as the medical term is utilized, and then based our interventions on primarily on weight.
And that BMI is body mass index?
Yes, body mass index, which we're discovering more and more in the entire medical community is discovering that it's not really a good measure or indicator for health at all. And that's really, the premise of health at every size as well, that this body mass index is pretty bogus. It lumps people into categories that aren't really necessary, that it's not really truly measuring health, like lab values or other measures of health that are actually more than just taking your height divided by your weight and doesn't account for body mass or composition, etc. So that was the weight normative approach. And I was primarily working, in facilities, etc. And I was monitoring my own health based on my weight, still engaging in disordered eating, throughout probably my entire life until I discovered intuitive eating 4 years ago. And now my approach is weight inclusive, meaning I focus with my patients on their health behaviors, healing their relationship with food, and then adding gentle nutrition. So with patients in larger bodies, we're not focusing on the number on the scale. We're focusing how they feel in their bodies. Are they nourishing their bodies consistently? Are they eating foods that make them feel good? Are they engaging in movement that they love? Are they getting enough sleep? Are they taking their medications and supplements as prescribed? And taking that focus off of weight often makes these health behaviors more sustainable. So that's how it's completely different than the traditional model of dietetics care.
And in the traditional model of dietetics care, is it that you're just trying to help people cut down how many calories or how much fat they're consuming, and then watching how that translates to a change in the scale?
Sure, not always, but that's certainly a component of care. There's more to, medical nutrition therapy, but oftentimes one of the goals is weight loss. That's part of a typical nutrition intervention. If someone is in a larger body, then automatically the goal is, something measurable. Let's lose 10% of body weight by X months, right? And in weight inclusive care, weight would not be a goal. It would be a lab value might. Let's say if a patient has high cholesterol will certainly be of interest, but it would be more like, let's, lower cholesterol by this much by this time, rather than focusing on weight as a parameter of health.
And then the other thing I'm hearing about what you're talking about is there's just a lot more focus on the mental, emotional relationship the person has with themselves, their body, and with the food they're consuming.
Yes, 100%. So in my line of work in particular, it's not always about the food. It is focusing on that relationship, helping them to understand why they might be utilizing foods to comfort themselves or cope with their emotions, and helping them find space to cope with their emotions with kindness without utilizing food to numb that. Figuring out why they're using food, tuning into people's innate hunger cues and fullness cues, and those might even be turned off. So helping them recognize what their bodies are truly feeling, and enjoying and being satisfied in food, without the emotional attachment to food.
Well, and when you mentioned that those hunger cues might, within the individual might be turned off, a question might be what could or might turn that off. And the first thing I think about is trauma experience. What are there other things that might turn it off?
Yes. Yes, trauma is definitely a cause of that. It's dissociation, right? Eating disorders are a form of dissociation, I believe, also. But other things that can cause that is actually this binge restrict cycle, or dieting, or just not honoring our innate hunger cues. Often when we're part of diet culture and we're in larger bodies and we're forced to constantly try to shrink our bodies, we're not listening or trusting our innate body's cues. So our body's hunger and fullness cues get completely skewed. So returning to that innate, actual natural hunger is a very, very important process in healing the relationship with food as well. Because again, just the idea of restricting and not listening to your internal cues. So let's say intermittent fasting is one that I like to talk about, is people are not honoring their innate hunger cues when they're hungry and only eating, via a prescribed window. Their hunger as an adaptation to starvation becomes less knowledgeable. They're so used to bypassing it that they don't hear it, and they're not in tune with their bodies anymore. They're trusting the external clock rather than their internal innate cues. So they stop working, essentially.
The other thing I think about here, you mentioned dissociating, and
Mm-hmm.
people like Peter Levine and the people that do with somatic therapy have become so aware that through the downloading of these traumatic energies, so many people are walking around basically cut off at the neck. So whatever's happening in the neck down, they're not really tuning into those cues, and maybe for decades.
Yes.
So is that something that you try to work to address? And if so, what kinds of tools do you have to help people address that?
Yeah, that's great. And it's tough. It's very tough to increase interoceptive awareness. You have to tread carefully with it. And, someone really has to be ready to feel their body again after being disconnected so long. So I think in terms of eating, it's, being mindful and aware, starting to enjoy your eating practice as a part of self-care, sitting down with your meal without distractions, noticing the smell, noticing the texture, thinking about who had to touch this food in order for it to be in front of you, from the person in the fields, from that actually harvested the wheat in your sandwich, from the person at the factory who works on the machines, to the advertising company that put together the logo for the bag that the bread comes in, and really kind of connecting, to the food and the entire experience of eating is working towards kind of trying to get that innate, body trust back. But again, it's treading carefully on opening up, those channels of feeling in your body as well. Also, there's different exercises and tools we utilize in intuitive eating in regards to fullness. There's some exercises for, drinking water and trying to really feel the water and feel your belly expand, not necessarily utilizing food, but just feeling what water feels like in your stomach, going back to those complete basics. But again, being non-distracted and completely in tune with your body to start building back some awareness.
So is is your experience as the coach or the dietitian or the therapist in this
Mhm.
process significantly different for you than it was before you got in this? And if so, how?
Oh my goodness. Yes. So as a clinical dietitian in long-term care, it was very black and white. It was very much numbers. It was meds. It was labs. It was anthropometrics. It was data. Here, I'm treating the whole person. I'm treating a body-mind connection. The work is so much more fulfilling. It's person-centered care. We've always talked about person-centered care in clinical areas, but there is nothing like really doing this deep, intensive outpatient counseling from, I wouldn't say a less clinical, but a less medical approach, because you're including mind and body, and that wasn't prevalent in the old model, the traditional model of care. So I definitely need to take more classes. Again, I have to expand my knowledge set in different therapies and get supervision that I didn't necessarily need as much, just because of the whole psychological aspect of my work now, which is super rewarding. It's almost made me want to change careers a few times and go back to school to become a psychologist. Actually, I'm not doing it though.
And I can't, I can't really recommend that, because it's you're going to lose this other focus that you bring, this other and energy field that you bring in when you come in from the knowledge of the diet, the knowledge of the physiology and nutrition that so many people that I talk to as medical doctors, they go through medical training and they get no nutritional training.
No, they don't. They get one class. And they often do harm, unfortunately. Not intentionally, but they don't have the knowledge.
Well, yeah, they don't have that breadth of knowledge in that area, right? So what you bring into it is, so I would imagine that you'd be more effective just gradually expanding, like you said, some of the supervision, some of the classes in things of a psychological nature or specific therapy interventions, and blending that into that core that you already have. I think you'd be much more effective that way.
Yes, I agree. Plus,
and
who has the time or money?
Well, and do the things that a psychologist can't without that training.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
So is it possible, I think I got a little bit of an idea about this intuitive eating, but what about the health at any size? How do you help me expand an awareness of what that's about?
Sure. So the health at every size is actually a movement that was coined by the Association of Size and let's see, ASDAH. Oh my goodness, the Association of Size, Diversity, and Health. I had to write it out so I get the acronym right, but it's based on inclusivity of people in all size, shapes, ethnicity, understanding the cultural influences of health, understanding that not everybody is able to be healthy also, so that your morality really isn't based on whether or not you're healthy, right? You're not a good or bad person based on your size or your health status. It's offering accessibility to people for joyful movement, having positive spaces that people, regardless of their, can engage in health promoting behaviors without worrying about being discriminated against based on their size in particular, but any other thing that might be challenging, or that an identity that might be considered an identity that is oppressed against. So ASDAH has some great resources, actually. They are working to revamp a lot of their policies right now, and definitely making sure that they're as inclusive as possible. But they do have a health at every size healthcare provider listing that's on there that you can find practitioners, not only dietitians, but therapists, doctors as well, that are also participating.
Say the website for that again.
It's ASDAH, ASDAH.org.
Okay.
And there's a listing area that you can find health at every size healthcare providers. So those that really are focused on, health behaviors rather than, weight centric kind of policies, because we do know that weight stigma is a leading cause of stress and trauma for those in larger bodies. This paradigm helps to address that. And also, of what ASDAH does is work towards racial equality as well, because larger bodies, it's also a racialized topic. So it's even more oppressive for those, people of color who are in larger bodies as well. So really trying to equalize the playing fields in healthcare, honestly. So that the weight stigma is not prevalent, that we're not, discriminating against people just based on the size of their bodies, that everyone's getting equal access to healthcare and the same treatment. So someone in a larger body should be getting the same treatment as someone in a thin body. The intervention should be, hey, go lose weight. It should be, hey, let's get some physical therapy and strengthen your knees. And that's what ASDAH and Health at Every Size is really working towards, is that equality and accessibility in all of healthcare. It's a pretty cool organization, actually.
Yeah, I can tell just the energy you have for talking about it. It's great.
Yeah.
Do you know where they're located, where they're based?
Actually, that's a good question. I don't. Let me see.
Is it is it a chapter-based organization? Do they have?
No, it's a national organization. I don't believe they have local chapters. And I don't see where their headquarters are, actually. You can be a member, though. So I am a member of ASDAH, and you get, benefits of being in their Hayes listing, etc. They have resources available. There's a conference. They work on they have an Abolish the BMI coalition. So really focusing on working to, get rid of BMI as a health parameter. But again, I think they have members all over the world, actually. But I don't know where their local headquarters are.
Well, I love the idea of a broader picture, a more inclusive picture of the person. That's why I try to make the majority of interviews that we've done here for the On Your Mind podcast be with people who do at least integrative, if not functional medicine, and or holistic approach from whatever their specialty is, because it is so beneficial to be able to integrate knowledge from different sources, looking at the whole person. And it gets so disjointed when we've got all these different specialists who aren't communicating with each other. And, you can miss the entire cause function of something if you're just focused on one specialty.
Yes, 100%. And that's why it's so impactful for me to know their entire history, their social history, their food history, to collaborate with their team, especially with eating disorders care, collaborate with therapists, collaborate with MDs to make sure patients are medically stable as well. Because like we said, MDs, they often don't know a lot about eating disorder care either. So I try to bridge that and try to educate them so that they can provide the best care for their patients as well. And usually they're pretty receptive because, as far as eating disorder specific therapy, they know that there's a little bit of a deficit of knowledge. So they're pretty receptive. But the collaboration of care is essential in treating the whole entire person. Is definitely, I think, the way forward in healthcare. And I hope more and more of that, we see more of that.
So when you mention this specific eating disorders treatment and care, my brain goes to all of the hospital programs that I've been aware of for the past 49 or so years of doing therapy, that it's a crisis, it's inpatient, et cetera. Do you interact with people from those programs? Do you cross refer? How do you get the patients that you deal with? Talk to me a little bit about that, if you would.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I do have some relationships with inpatient networks, therapists, dietitians, et cetera. I'm considered like a step down level of care. So once they've completed either a residential treatment program, inpatient, maybe they go down to a partial hospitalization program, then they do an intensive outpatient program, then they come to me as an outpatient patient. So typically I'm seeing patients that are pretty medically stable, and we're working towards maintenance and making sure that they're, weight restored. At times I'm working with patients that are almost intermediate, where I might be working with them and recommending them for a higher level of care. So they might come to me almost as a first resort, not wanting to go, concerned parents. And then as we work with them, they might need that, greater support. And then I refer them off to a higher level of care to get assessed. And then oftentimes they work their way back down to me again. And I do see patients, some patients I've had on my load almost since the beginning. I've had patients for 2 or 3 years, and I've worked my way with them through all of those levels of care, at times. But it's really successful when I get to see them stay out of a higher level of care and continue to be stable with me for months. And I hate to see them go, but I'm very excited when they don't need to see me at all anymore. That's when they graduate completely. So, yeah.
So how much of your work is done, like we're doing this interview, virtually or through Zoom, and how much is in person?
That's great. Currently my practice is 75% virtual. So I only have I would guess that would like to be in person. And I think that's a variety of factors. It's convenient. A lot of my adult clients love telehealth consultations because they can do it while they're at work, like on their lunch break. They don't have to commute. The majority of my in-person patients, I would say, would be my adolescent patients. They like to see me in person. They want to be here, which is interesting. You think the younger generation would be more acclimated to the telehealth and prefer that. But, from my experience, they want that, in-face connection. So most of my adolescents, I don't see many adolescents virtually, interestingly enough.
Wow. That is interesting. And I would have thought the reverse, just like you said, I would have thought it would have been reversed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so let's get centered here and take a breath and think, if we're reaching near the end of our time, if you scan what we've talked about already, is there something in it that you want to go back and highlight, or something that I haven't even asked you about yet that you want to put in this discussion?
Understanding the importance of eating disorder therapy in general and mental health in general. I think in the nutrition world, there's so many things out there that are so pervasive in our face regarding body image, especially for young women. Social media plays a huge impact on, developing young girls' self-esteem. So I think if anyone can take anything away from this, being mindful that commenting on people's bodies or commenting on things that they're eating or making comments in general about, appearance, good or bad, is, to be used with caution, I guess, like as a warning, because that often someone is coming from. I had a patient actually this morning who was very triggered by a neighbor making what she thought was a compliment. Typically you say, "Oh, look at you. You look great. You lost weight." But that comment led to a validation of her eating disorder behavior and increased her restriction and purging because it validated, that it was quote unquote working. So I think just, mentioning that, being mindful of the things that you say to people regarding their bodies, is something that we should be sensitive about, and is really contradictory to, what we praise on a daily basis. So I think just making that point as something added to get out there in the world.
Yeah, I think it's a big issue for us as individuals, but also certainly as a culture, that
Oh yes,
we have some toss off phrases about how beauty is more than skin deep, etc. And yet there's so much of a conditioning to focus on the size, the shape, the clothes. And when we do that, we miss the person, literally miss who the person is.
Yes, 100%. We do. And you often hear it, you don't hear, it's like, "Oh, she was such a pretty girl." When, there's an untimely death of a young woman, you don't hear, "Oh, the loss of all the other things that she was," right? It's dehumanizing, and it happens to men as well. But I think in particular, for young women, it really is young women are viewed as objects first. They're, whether or not they're beautiful is more correlated to their worth, whether or not they're smart or athletic or funny, etc. So kind of
Kind.
trying to reframe that from, oh, she's such a pretty girl, to she's funny and kind and wonderful. Taking it away from appearance based standards, which we have a long way to go, but
yeah. And I love the idea of helping people. Gay and Catherine Hendricks are an older couples therapy team that have written books and been on internet television shows and internet, etc. And one of the practices that was so impactful early on when I started reading and listening to them was the idea of not just saying to their partner, I love you, but making an appreciation list daily and sharing that with their partner. So it is a practice that can be strengthened, that we talk about the different aspects of a person and the way their life and their behaviors are impacting me. And I can talk to them about what I appreciate about that, whether it's thoughtfulness, whether it's gentleness, whether it's I appreciate how gentle they are with themselves or how they're doing good self-care. If I ask them, hey, can you help me with this? And they say, I'd like to, but I have to, I can appreciate, well, you know what? They did what was best for them. That's a really good thing.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
if I'm going to start looking for and listing things I appreciate about a person, it brings me into that relationship with who they are more than just that cursory I love you or you're pretty.
Yes. I love that. That's awesome. I'll have to look that up.
Well, and or just start using it. I mean, I actually try to have people, I talk to them about what I appreciate about them. I encourage them to develop an awareness of their own traits that are valuable. And there's a way of looking at different stages in a relationship. When the relationship changes or a relationship ends, I have this little practice or tool that I call saying goodbye to good people without saying goodbye to good memories.
Yes.
And what that talks about is reviewing the relationship, at least up to here, or if the relationship ends, the whole thing, and looking at what was a challenge for me in this relationship. What was a blessing for me in this relationship? How did I grow because I wanted to be more like you in this aspect, or of humor or perseverance or kindness? How did I have to grow because I had to adjust to the fact that you weren't as kind as I wanted you to be at times, etc.? How do I think your life changed for the better by having interaction with me? So it's this idea of digging into what it was actually like growing in this process of being in this relationship.
Yes.
And getting clear about what I appreciated and what was of value.
Yes.
And I encourage people to do that in their own lives and their current relationships, even if they're not coming close to an ending, because it helps enrich the experience.
And would you think that would work with even enriching your relationship with yourself?
Yes. That's the whole point, right?
Yes.
If I learn to make a list of what I value about me, we're all really good at what I don't like, right? We're all really good at all the negative self-talk, and even for some of the traumatized people I deal with the self-loathing. And yet we're not so good at slowing down and noticing where we're already succeeding, where we're thriving, where we're being a blessing to ourselves and others.
I like that. I think that would work really well with my patients, in particular with body image issues. Also recognizing that there's so much value outside of that external validation, looking within for all those wonderful things.
Well, yeah. And because we've been conditioned so much by our culture, I would imagine a lot of the work you do is to help people understand their value,
yes,
which is already there, which the culture doesn't feed back to them or reward them for, etc.
Yep, 100%. Yes.
And one of the things that I share so much with people is a Jewish Buddhist grandmotherly type woman whose name will come to me. She would put her hand over her heart space anytime she had any kind of a negative emotional state. She would put her hand over, Sylvia Borstein, I believe was her name, and she would put her hand over her heart and she'd say, Sylvia, sweetheart, you're in pain. Take a few deep breaths, slow down, calm down, then we'll look at what's going on, and then we'll decide what to do. But for now, Sylvia, sweetheart, you're in pain. And I took from that a tremendous value in my own personal work of being more and more gentle with myself on a regular basis. Because the whole picture of what I see shifts dramatically sometimes when I just interrupt the negative self-talk.
Yep.
And when I can be gentle with myself.
And that is part of the work with my patients is helping them reframe that negative self-talk and looking at instead of with shame, looking at it with curiosity. Where are those thoughts coming from?
The curiosity.
Yes. Yeah. Because the shame spiral just causes them to utilize more coping mechanisms. You're utilizing foods in ways to punish themselves. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I greatly appreciate your willingness to share this stuff with us. I will put, give me the acronym for that second website.
Sure. It's ASDAH.
I'll put that in the notes as well. And I'll look into it myself. And I have much gratitude for your willing to share the work. Keep up.
My absolute pleasure. I like to shout it from the rooftops any chance I get. I'm really passionate about it, as you probably can see. And, I've seen how it's impacted, myself and obviously all of my patients. So thank you for the opportunity to share it.
And the website for your practice is
www.olivebranchdietitian, dietian.com.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for your time. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you, Dr. Tim.
Mia Greco is the owner of Olive Branch Nutrition. Mia pioneers a revolutionary paradigm shift in nutritional counseling, emphasizing holistic health and individual well-being over conventional diet culture. At Olive Branch Nutrition, Mia offers a safe, supportive environment where clients feel empowered to explore their unique nutritional journeys, free from judgment or weight-centric ideologies. Her weight-inclusive, non-diet philosophy is deeply rooted in the health at every size movement, promoting body acceptance, intuitive eating, and honoring diverse bodies. Mia treats patients with eating disorders, disordered eating, and chronic disease using the Weight-Inclusive Nutrition Program. Mia's academic background includes a Master of Science in Nutrition and Master of Public Health degrees. Mia champions evidence-based, compassionate care, reshaping the narrative around health and nutrition. As a registered dietitian and licensed dietitian nutritionist, she empowers clients to foster a positive relationship with food, rejecting societal pressures and embracing nurturing, sustainable approaches to wellness. Beyond her transformative work at Olive Branch Nutrition, Mia serves as an esteemed adjunct faculty member and clinical supervisor at Harper College. Her dedication to education and mentorship extends her impact beyond private practice, guiding future nutrition professionals toward a compassionate, inclusive approach to healthcare.
You've been listening to the On Your Mind podcast, offered by Journey's Dream, where we support people through mental health challenges to a place of true and lasting well-being. If you love our show, we invite you to visit onyourmindpodcast.org to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our helpful resources. Thank you for listening.